Heyo everybody, Haku here with my read-through for the next Magical Girl Raising Project, or Mahou Shoujo Bikisei Keikaku episode, and this one is called Illegal Magical Girl. Don't you just hate all those illegal magical girls coming into End City, taking your magical candies, taking your jobs? A fucking doll comes into your city and takes your job. What do? Okay. We know a certain weeboo shrine maiden that would be very, very upset. Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and start reading this. I did record 2 reviews before getting into this, so hopefully my voice is sustained for these 14 pages. But either way, let's see what happens with apparently Rionetta and Ripple. It says this story is set a few weeks before the Magical Candy competition of Magical Girl Raising Project, which is interesting. Because that means Ripple should be a very new magical girl, I think. Because I thought Ripple was like the latest one when they went into the magical candy competition to become a magical girl in the light novel. In the anime they switched it to Snow White, but I thought in the light novel it was Ripple. And then of course that's not taking into account Hardcore Alice, who became a magical girl like a week or 2 into the thing. But either way, let's start reading. The Kinhobai activities have been happening in End City for a year. Originally, the one that had a base in End City was the Fujian-based Hoshinen. The local gangsters demanded them when their work they didn't have. The local gangsters demanded them when their work they didn't have the know-how to, or if they didn't know to, like passport forgery or smuggling help. They divided it to them because of their specialty. It was an organization that had worked extensively with End City. The sentence is a bit messy, but I get the gist of it. The reason why Kinhobai had received the Hoshinen relieved the Hoshinen within End City was a little intricate. The Shanghai-style Kinhobai and the Fujian-style Hoshinen, previously around the time before the Vietnam War, were against each other and had repeated conflicts with each other. Over a long period of time they traded blows and abused each other in a variety of places, but for the first time in 30 years, as a result of the substitution, the Kinhobai boss shook hands with the other one's boss. They weren't just putting a blind eye to fighting, they valued honor more than anything. To make a situation where both of them wouldn't lose, they added and subtracted carefully based on secret meetings, replacing their dominance and responsibility. Both of them tried not to crush the image of the other so that they both won. The Kinhobai inherited the work that the Hoshinen had. Just inheriting it won't be a problem because they were able to divide their residence with the local gang Tetsuwa Kai. The problem here is how the Hoshinen divided their official position and their actual intentions. The Hoshinen were getting along with the Tetsuwa Kai on the surface. They wouldn't make any moves against their source of funds. They were simply doing passport forgery, smuggling help for income, or so it seems. In reality, they've been selling drugs illegally, running speakeasies and unlicensed mahjong places. The Tetsuwa Kai weren't a gathering of idiots. On this scale, they could easily turn a blind eye to them. Okay? And the Hoshinen relieved the Kinhobai. The Kinhobai always listened to any explanation for any jobs or acts. They still weren't taught about subtlety. Then they began to work diligently in their jobs. The Tetsuwa Kai saw the Hoshinen relieving the Kinhobai as an attempt by an emergent force to take over the city. The Tetsuwa Kai hired a bouncer magical girl, ordering her to attack the Kinhobai base. The gunman magical girl single-handedly crushed the base and the Kinhobai forces were driven out of End City. If this was all over, then things would have been easier, but that isn't the case. The old man took a deep breath, tilting the glass in his right hand, moistening his throat with the red liquid. The Kinhobai knew what kind of insult they received, and they wanted revenge. And the old man turned his left wrist, looking at the handset he had on his left hand. That's a rather half-hearted reply, don't you think? As a friend, I'm worried for you, so I contacted you. End City is dangerous. It's not a good spot to hide as a magical girl. I don't need any friends. They simply get in the way. Your You're only a trading partner." The voice of the girl he heard from the phone, contrary to his own tone, was low and calm. The old man placed the glass on his right hand on the table. "You're still holding on to unrequited love at this age, huh?" There was no reaction to the sorrowful words by the girl on the other side of the phone. "By the way, regarding the mermaid's tear, what has become of it? Are you attempting to pick a fight with me? I'm quite busy now, so I don't have the free time for you." "Picking a fight? Listen, what's more important is what I said before. N-City is dangerous. Let's move you elsewhere." The phone cut off. The old man furrowed his eyebrows and watched the handset. He adjusted the collar of his gown and placed the handset on the table. He stretched his eye patch 5 centimeters away and released it with a snap, resting back on the wheelchair and sighing. He stretched out his back spine and faced a suit-wearing man. "Hey, Totiyama, you're my friend, aren't you?" Interesting enough that this guy has an eye patch and a wheelchair. Ripple was on the roof of a department store in Nakayato. "I haven't faded away yet," she told herself. On the department store at night, the 100 yen operated machines and popcorn shops made her feel especially sentimental. She's been a magical girl for 1 week, and she's gotten used to the activities too. The amount of candy she's getting are also increasing. She hasn't seen Calamity Mary since then. If they never meet, then no fights will occur. Top Speed visits her once every 2 days. It's troublesome and annoying, but her cooking was delicious. However, Top Speed's the type of person who gets by only with praises, so... A person's voice at midnight. There were no crowds of people in front of the Nakayato department stores, but she heard a voice all the way from the rooftop. She looked downwards. There were multiple people. There was a man stretching his arms out as he was shouting, but his hand was grabbed and tossed away, while another person was beaten and sent flying with a large suitcase. Ripple jumped over the fence and ran down the building walls. This was annoying, but this was a magical girl's turn to show. The mermaid's tear was how her misery started. This aquamarine or sapphire jewel that was favored by either the Tudors or York dynasties, a jewel that was stolen by a butler from an oil company and sold to a store, and Rionetta was planning on receiving it as a reward for her job. She didn't really have any interest in jewels or anything. Her late father's acquaintance wanted to give her granddaughter a present. Her late father's acquaintance wanted to give his granddaughter a present, I guess, and asked for the mermaid's tear. She was playing the part of an antique dealer and would pass it on to get some good profit. At least that's what should have happened. Okay, so of course that would be Conaway's grandfather, and this is how they were connected to Rionetta. Okay? The person who was supposed to give it to her claimed that a magical girl holding a doll had already been there at the appointed time, and so he gave it to her. Rionetta knew that was a lie. That's because there was no one there when Rionetta came at the appointed time. The claims were at odds. As a result of the two of them not yielding, Rionetta was now being chased by her former employer. According to them, Rionetta was just a thief who was trying to double her own rewards. Even though Rionetta constantly shouted that "you're the one who hasn't given me a reward to begin with," no one was willing to listen. In this world, only power can support your claims. Rionetta knew that before she became Rionetta. If people could understand who was right just because they were right in this world, then Rionetta should have still been a lady even now. When her life of escaping began, Rionetta had hidden in N-City, but her father's millionaire acquaintance warned that N-City wasn't good. She didn't really like him that much, but for now she'll heed his advice and leave N-City. But she was found when she left her hideout. It wasn't the person looking for Rionetta, it was an organization looking for a magical girl, probably the Kinhobai that they were talking about earlier. She couldn't waste time at a place like this against the 3 small-time men. She threw one and beat one away. Then, for the last one, she was going to kick him away, but her doll-like shin was pressed by a soft palm. Her legs were stopped with a thump. A ninja. Geta sandals, a red scarf, shuriken-like hair accessory on her shiny black hair flowing off to one side. The small-time gangster screamed and ran away. Rionetta wasn't looking at them anymore. Someone with a strange costume that looked like a ninja, a well-organized face. More importantly, she was able to stop Rionetta's kicks. She couldn't be anything other than a magical girl. Rionetta ran off in a dash, not slowing down as she tore shutters, bent iron fences, breaking into the glass entrance of a department store. She noticed someone following behind her, a pursuer, no doubt about it. It wasn't human. A humanoid doll had moved. At first glance, she could see that rather than a human girl, it was an intricately built doll, but it was throwing those men, beating them and kicking them. Ripple, who wanted to stop the fight with a calm mind, was surprised by this abnormal situation of the moving doll, then couldn't react to its sudden movements as it ran off to the department store. The private security alarm should have already rang in the department store, but she couldn't just leave her alone. The doll girl moved into the department store with an agility that Ripple couldn't react to, running with a speed that she couldn't easily catch up to. She didn't know her identity, but at the very least she wasn't an opponent that a human can deal with. That doll was attacking people, doesn't have anything to do with me, Kano Sazanami would think, abandoning it. But after becoming Ripple, she couldn't do that anymore. The life of a magical girl was truly troublesome and annoying. She ran, skipping 10 stairs in a single step, dashing through the objects inside the store. Along the way she was surprised by the mannequin dolls that followed her and threw kunai at them, and after being horribly dragged around, she went out to the roof. The doll girl had her back to a metal fence and looked this way. Ripple breathed out all the air she had been holding in her lungs all at once. First, send out the dolls. That was Rionetta's way of fighting. With dolls, no matter how many of them are destroyed, she won't get damaged. They were neither partners, friends, nor comrades. They were just objects. She won't feel anything if they were destroyed. Dolls. This time she sent mannequins to attack, but she also observed how her opponent counterattacked. She moved swiftly, she had good judgment. However, if she was just strong, she could be handled with. The problem was the unique magical skill that magical girls use. If it was a magical girl who was a bad matchup for Rionetta, or a magical girl who had an absolutely powerful magical skill before regarding matchups, she'd have to find weaknesses or avoid battle. This time, that kind of pattern wasn't applicable. Her opponent threw kunai to the mannequin. The kunai strangely changed its trajectory to hit the mannequin. The rotation and air resistance wasn't at a level that allowed that kind of change. This was the enemy's magical skill. With Rionetta, this would be an easy magical skill to handle. Her pursuer was still a young magical girl. Her experience hasn't yet surpassed her abilities. In terms of age, she was different from Rionetta. Killing, being killed, acting for money, using her magical girl powers for her own self-interest, had long left behind the act of saving people in distress. Okay? The amount of times that she's seen scenes of carnage was different than Rionetta. It all started with her father. A debt that he owed kept increasing until it was something he couldn't repay just by working as usual. Eventually, even a rich lady like her had to get her hands on dirty work or she wouldn't survive. After you've gotten into dirty work, there was no getting out. The red color of blood doesn't disappear by being cleaned. She didn't start this job because she wanted to save her father from hardship. She dismissed having to suffer because of scum like that. It was because the debtors pushed the fact that her father's debt had to be paid paid by his daughter. She didn't know what became of her father, but she didn't need friends, partners, or comrades. What bonded Rionetta was her own safety and money. Even though she made friends and pretended for so long, in an emergency she'd throw them off a cliff. Actually, she's done something similar to that several times. She pretended to run around, entering the department store and using her magical skill on a variety of dolls. She waited for her pursuer on the rooftop. She'd have the department store dolls attack from behind, a pincer attack, mannequins, plushies, mascot dolls. Using Rionetta's magical skill, there was plenty of room to maneuver in how she can be a puppeteer. She should have cornered her. She kicked open the door to the roof. She saw the girl she was confronting smiling. She noticed that the mannequins were attacking her from behind. She turned around and kicked off the mannequin's head, sticking her kunai on its knee, beating it, hitting it, a trail of destruction following. Continuing from the department store to the rooftop entrance, dolls continued to appear one after another. The stormy landscape of the amusement park-wide rooftop, despite only having minimum playground equipment and facilities, was crowded enough to make her think it looked like some kind of theme park parade. She leapt, she jumped, she continued to change her location, moving around so she wouldn't be surrounded. Small creatures ran across her foot. She was caught on something. She almost fell before putting her hand to a wall, but this time her hand was caught. Puppets. Originally they were only able to move around using their strings, but they moved around on their own and clustered their strings together on Ripple. Were they being controlled by magic? The strength of the strings had increased. After that, plushies slowly caught her. They looked like cute chibi animals on the outside, but each of them was holding a razor-like knife in their hands. With their thin, sharp blades, and while Ripple's legs had their movement dulled by strings, they began cutting up Ripple everywhere. Blood began to flow. Ripple scolded her own heart for being frightened, and she was angry at her limbs being weakened. She was resisting these tiny things like Gulliver. She pulled the string, swinging the puppets, pulling out the sword on her back. She chopped the plushies, dispatching the puppets that were still rushing towards her, rolling to avoid the mannequin's fist. She warded off kicks, avoided hand swords, and turned her sword to the two reinforcements from the entrance. These two life-size dolls, an old white-suited gentleman and a red afro clown. Come to think of it, there was a fast food shop inside the store she passed by. Contrary to their usually unfriendly image to each other, the two of them complemented their weaknesses and were a good combination, attacking Ripple exquisitely. Despite being able to take their attacks for a while, this time mannequins were appearing as a flock. Some were dressed halfway, some were naked and completely undressed, all of them uniformly expressionless, gathering from the entrance. Their numbers, Ripple stopped counting how many there were at first glance. It was pointless. Okay, we're at page 9. I'm going to grab some water really quick. Okay, water down. Something was moving in the shade of the mannequin. It was fast. It wasn't a doll. It had a pressure that made her want to throw up. Moving from shadow to shadow, hiding behind the clown, it swung its claws towards Ripple. She couldn't block it. It tore her cheeks, scooping up blood. It was the first doll she saw, a spherical-jointed, beautiful girl doll, but one that swung her right-hand claws to attack. The doll girl quickly hid behind the shadows and once again vanishing any traces of her. The reason she couldn't block her attacks was because of her spherical joints and contracting arms. Because of that, her range of motions became larger, her attacks stretched beyond her expectations, her angles breaking beyond limits, and because of that, it scraped past Ripple's sword. If Ripple didn't bend backwards, her carotid artery would have been sliced. A group of plushies gathered, overlapping like coordinated group gymnasts, becoming a large single wall. But the moment she noticed that, claws burst through the plushy wall. She reflexively moved her left hand that had no sword. She blocked the claws with her left palm. The claws pierced through her, tearing her near the vicinity of her left wrist. She began to bleed, and while that was happening, Ripple grasped the claws. She got her. Ripple gripped her sword in her right hand backwards, swinging towards the doll girl, and at that moment she heard a click. The doll girl had removed her right wrist and stepped backwards. Ripple's sword hit the air. She was fooled. Against Ripple, who lost her position because of the swing, a frog from the pharmacy led a huge mass of dolls to hit her body. Ripple was sent flying into the air at high speed. As she flew, she caught the doll girl in the edge of her vision. She saw a look that seemed like a doll-like mockery expression. Blood-red anger began to fill her body. Ripple flipped once again mid-air, and when she landed on the fence, she jumped further. She jumped over the doll heads, landing on the side of the bench on the center of the roof. After using her strength to cut the things bolting the feet of the bench, she raised the bench. The dolls, plushies, the gentleman, and the clown, and all the puppets all came approaching her. Ripple was angry. An unbelievable amount of anger was rushing to her, and she passed into her bones and muscles. She held the bench once, twice, 3 times, swinging it horizontally like a pro wrestler's giant swing, mowing down the approaching dolls. Throwing it towards the rooftop entrance, she did the same to the other bench within her reach. She destroyed everything within her sight. The concrete were scattered like dust, and when the dust enveloped, the breeze would blow it away. Okay, hold on. She struck the dolls, closing up the entrance where the reinforcements would come. However, there was still an enemy remaining, the doll girl kicking the back of the throne bench lightly and landing, her biggest enemy, and she was still moving. Being young also meant that they were full of energy. Rionetta couldn't copy extremely rough methods of attacks like throwing benches. She was surprised, but that was it. Did she exhaust all of her power in her arrogance? The ninja was staggering. Any longer and she was going to collapse. Rionetta, who was looking for opportunities, ran out while tilting forward. While she kicked and scattered the concrete at her feet, she connected something to her right wrist, replacing it with new parts. She clenched her hand and opened it. 10 kunai flew, each of them flying at a trajectory beyond the laws of physics, all rushing towards Rionetta. It had speed and it also had weight, however, it was readable. She parried it with her right hand and The parried kunai hit another kunai, and she blocked 3 others with her left hand as a shield. One of them she avoided by lowering her head. It ended with only her bonnet getting ripped. She extended her left-hand claws, cutting down 2 kunai in the air. The last 2 didn't reach Rionetta as it stabbed near her feet. Did she use the last of her power throwing the final kunai? Her enemy's knees collapsed, and she used her right hand to support her body. Rionetta was going to finish her off with a stab. She took a step forward, then she tripped forward. There was a shining light between the 2 kunai. Was there a transparent thread between one kunai and the other? For what? It was so that she could trip Rionetta. She immediately grabbed the ground with her hands to avoid falling, but because of that, her right hand was obstructed. Her right hand couldn't block the flying shuriken. Rionetta's face was sliced off. If she had normal flesh, she would have died, but Rionetta, who had a doll's body, still had opportunities left. When she raised her head, it was just before the sword was swung. Rionetta reached her arms out to protect her body. Her right hand was cut from the elbow down. She had no more doubts on who her enemy was. This was an enemy who wanted to kill her, and the fact that she was going to kill her too was also there. She kicked the rising doll girl, and... this was an enemy that wanted to kill her, and the fact that she was going to kill her too was also there. She kicked the rising doll girl, sliced her upper body as it arched up. She tore up the doll's beautiful clothes, scratching her wooden body, but the doll girl still didn't stop moving. The doll girl used her right arm that had her elbows cut earlier to block Ripple's sword. Her sleeves were torn, wooden pieces flew off, her arms became shorter. The doll girl forcibly pushed forward, which was convenient for Ripple. Ripple deliberately matched her opponent's momentum. She pushed, retreated, had her back to the fence. With this, no dolls could surprise attack her from behind. The doll girl's attacks were large swings. She was getting sloppy. She parried and dodged. Her contracted arms grew, and she deflected it with the ridges of her sword. There was a sound of cutting from the fence behind her. The doll girl's consecutive attacks only managed to hit the fence. I'm gonna grab some water really quick. Okay. She kicked her left arm strongly, aiming for the moment when the figure of the doll seemed to collapse, after which she threw a kunai to her left knee, wedging the joints. The moment she raised up her sword to swing at the falling doll, someone grabbed her from behind. The cold feeling of metal stabbed Ripple's skin. Her sword didn't move. All the dolls were destroyed. She also blocked the entrance where new dolls could emerge from. Her back should only be towards the fence. Claws protruded towards the confused Ripple. When she twisted her body to avoid it, a roundhouse kick came from an angle she couldn't see and connected with the back part of her head directly. While she realized that the claw stab was a feint, Ripple lost consciousness. Her pursuer really was a powerful magical girl. She was prepared to kill and also prepared to be killed. Despite being trapped in a corner, she had a small flame lit deep in her heart. If it had been 3, 2, or maybe even 1 year later, Rionetta might have been the one beaten. However, now was Rionetta's victory. She removed her magic from the doll supporting her pursuer's body, and the doll returned to being a mesh of wires and fell. In the last phase, Rionetta had pretended to attack with abandon and was aiming to tear up the fence behind her pursuer into a humanoid shape. She was in a hurry. She had to make something complicated. Even if it was rickety, a doll was a doll. She moved the torn fence doll and had it squeeze her. Rionetta approached her fallen, unmoving pursuer. The damage she had received on her left knee was enormous, and her center of gravity had become awkward, but she could deliver a finishing stab. If she didn't finish her off now, someday she'll lose against her. Rionetta pinched the fingers of her left hand together, aiming for her pursuer's throat. Please wait. She didn't sense anything. Rionetta kept her posture low to the ground as she turned to where the voice was coming from. A young girl with the moon behind her. She cast a long shadow on the desolate rooftop. Her left knee couldn't move well. Her right arm was in ruins. She only had a few remaining fighting energy left. My apologies, but would you kindly turn a blind eye to her? Her test will begin soon. Her opponent had vines wrapped around her legs and carried roses on her shoulders. Even for a magical girl, she was fancy. The magical girl shouldn't be familiar, but her tone of voice, it made her heart tremble. If you still don't care, perhaps I will have to fight. If you so wish, I will be your opponent once again. I can't assure you that the outcome won't be different than last time. It was her instincts. If she fought here, she'd be defeated. Rionetta gradually retreated. Still, fate is an odd thing. Could meetings happen no matter what? I've heard that many things like that happen to magical girls. She looked behind her, running down the department store wall like a beast. She shook off the fear of climbing up her legs and did nothing but run. I don't need to fight when there's no money involved, she told herself. She heard the sounds of sirens, police cars, and ambulances both. Bystanders are even beginning to gather in front of the department store. Ripple looked down below while breathing with her shoulders. The roof, which had been a place to relax, had now been destroyed. Around the department store, beaten and fallen mannequins and plushies were scattered. So, you want to tell me what happened here? Top Speed, who sat on the front seat, was speaking in a slightly scary tone. When Ripple regained consciousness, she was sitting on the back seat of Rapid Swallow. When Top Speed arrived, she said Ripple had been laying alone on the rooftop of the department store. Ripple had lost. Humiliation and anger were trembling inside her body, trembling like a windshield in the middle of a typhoon. If Top Speed were here, would she have won? She thought as it made her angrier than before. She let her anger take over and hit Top Speed. Ow, what was that for? Ripple placed all her irritation and frustration into her tongue and clicked it as hard as she could. It tasted like blood. Oh, you came back alive? That's excellent. Well, about the mermaid's tear, however. The call turned off. The old man watched the handset for a while. Magical girls, huh? He muttered, and as if he wasn't interested, he properly let it go. He changed expressions abruptly, looking at his granddaughter with a good mood, and spoke. Kanoe, you like magical girls, don't you? There's an anime movie playing right about now. His granddaughter, who heard her grandfather's words, stroked her hair with his left hand. She pressed down the hem of her skirt as she brought her knees together. She placed the round saucer on the table and placed a cup on it. You're saying you'd like to see a movie together with your adorable granddaughter before you die? You don't have to go so far as to think I'm an admirable grandfather. I was just curious. The girl, who was younger than her tone of voice, had light in her eyes that was older than her way of speaking. She slowly blinked. When she opened her eyes, the light was gone. Recently, there are lots of controversial magical girl stories. I prefer sweet love romance. The old man didn't feel the light in the girl's eyes and playfully spread his hands wide. A love romance, Do you think that'd be something fun to watch with your grandfather? Watching with friends is always fun, isn't it? The two of them looked at each other and had a similar smile on their face. Okay, well that was what it was. Not the best one. It was pretty much just a really long, confusing fight the whole time. And yeah, it was just really confusing. Sorry I didn't say much during it. It was just that, I was having a really hard time following everything and trying to keep up with what was actually going on. And even then, it was still just kind of just just kind of a messy fight. That's all it was. So yeah, that one, I don't know, is that my least favorite episode so far? I don't think it is. There's probably the Akane one was still less good than this. But yeah, I don't know. This was okay, I guess. I don't have anything bad to say about it. I just don't really have anything good to say about it either. I'm very, very neutral on this one. But either way, if you did like the video, comment down there to tell me what you thought of this one, what you thought of my thoughts on it. Subscribe for more Magical Girl Raising Project, much more on the channel. Follow on Twitter if you want. I'll try to keep you updated there and stuff for the channel. If you want a link to the Discord server, just ask and I'll give you one. That's it. Thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.